I received this comment about my moles and I was honestly confused. Where I'm from, moles are just there. Not really a big deal, not always considered beautiful, but not something you'd necessarily want to remove either. That said, I have spent a lot of time in Asia, and I remember once in Singapore, that random lady on the street stopped me and asked if I wanted her to remove most of my moles, which apparently bothered her. But then came this comment. I dug a bit deeper and found out that in some cultures, moles on your right hand means you were deeply loved in your past life. It made me realize how many things we take for granted when it comes to beauty standards, and how much of what we see as flaws or assets is actually just cultural preferences. So I went down the rabbit hole of contradicting beauty standards around the world. Buckle up because we're going on a word tour to see how beauty shifts depending on where you are. Let's talk skin first. In East Asia, pale skin has been worshipped for centuries. Historically, it was a symbol of class. If your skin was pale, it meant you weren't working outside in the sun, so you had money, status, and time to stay indoors. That idea kinda stuck. Even today, you'll find whitening products all over shelves in China, Vietnam, and Thailand, among many others. And this isn't just an East Asian thing. In India, skin tone has long been a source of social hierarchy. Centuries of caste discrimination, colonial influence, and Bollywood beauty ideals have all fed into the idea that fairer skin means more desirable. Matrimonial ads often mention wheatish complexion as a kind of code, meaning not too dark but not too fair either. In some African countries, there's a similar dynamic. The market for skin bleaching products is huge. In places like Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana, lighter skin often means better job prospects and higher status. But in other African communities like the Yoruba and the Maasai, cultures traditionally honor darker skin tones as a sign of health, resilience, and beauty. Now let's move on to the West. In places like Sweden, the UK, or the US, being tanned is often seen as more attractive. It says, "I've been on holiday," or "I have time for leisure." It's less about class through avoidance and more about class through access. That's why fake tan is a massive industry in these countries. People buy bottled bronzers and spray tans just to look like they've had a beach weekend, even in the middle of winter. The same applies to Australia, where the beach lifestyle is part of the national identity. Tan skin is associated with health, youth, and sportiness. Despite Australia having one of the world's highest skin cancer rates, the golden tan is still praised by many, especially in surf culture. And that's the white thing. The same skin tone that one culture takes health risks and spends money to lighten, another takes health risks and spends money to darken. Freckles are also a perfect example of how beauty standards can flip completely depending on where you are. In some Asian cultures, especially in traditional beauty ideals, freckles were considered blemishes. In the popular anime and novel series The Apothecary Diaries, the protagonist Mao Mao deliberately draws fake freckles on her face to make herself appear unattractive. That perception still lingers. In parts of East Asia, skincare routines often focus on evenness and brightness. Freckles are something people try to hide, lighten, or erase. But over in the West, it's almost the opposite. Freckles are often seen as cute and youthful. They've become so trendy that people are now getting them tattooed on. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Moving on to Korean beauty culture. There is a trend called aegyosil, or enhancing the little puffy bit of fat just under the eyes. It makes you look like you're always smiling or a bit baby-faced, which is seen as sweet and youthful. Some use makeup tricks to fake it, and others go as far as getting fillers to enhance it. But in many Western cultures, under-eye puffiness is something we're taught to hide. We spend money on concealers and cold rollers trying to erase dark circles and eye bags. Now let's circle back to moles for a second. A mole on your hand or on your face might not mean anything in Western cultures, or a reason to hide in another. In Chinese face reading, moles are believed to hold clues about your personality and destiny. A mole on your cheek might mean emotional intensity. On the forehead, it could symbolize leadership or burden. Even the color of the mole matters. Black versus red, flat versus raised, all have different interpretations. In India, mole astrology is also a thing. A mole on the left side of a woman's body can indicate financial luck or challenges, depending on its placement. And in African spiritual traditions, some cultures believe moles are ancestral markings, basically connections to past generations or signals from spirits. Moving on to facial features. Let's talk about dimples. They are considered super attractive in many cultures. In India and parts of China, they're seen as a sign of good luck, youthfulness, and charm. Some even believe that dimples bring prosperity or romantic fortune. In fact, there's a growing trend of dimpleplasty, a cosmetic surgery that creates artificial dimples. It's especially popular in South Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of the US right now. But it hasn't always been that way everywhere. In some Western cultures, dimples have gone in and out of fashion. There were even old superstitions in Europe that linked them to being devious or sneaky. Now, face shape in general is a big deal in beauty culture. In Korea and parts of East Asia, the perfect face is small and V-shaped, with a narrow chin, a soft jawline, and a slim face. This has led to an entire industry of jawline surgery and contouring treatments. Meanwhile, in Western cultures, a strong jawline is often seen as attractive, especially on men. Visible cheekbones and even square faces are linked to strength, confidence, and model-like features. So the same jaw could read as masculine, sexy, or too strong, depending on the cultural lens. Another feature worth looking at is teeth. In most Western countries and Middle East, crooked teeth are usually seen as something to fix. Braces, aligners, veneers, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry aimed at achieving the perfect straight smile. But in Japan, there's something called yaeba, which means double tooth. It refers to slightly crooked or protruding canine teeth, and it's actually considered cute and super youthful. Some even get cosmetic procedures to make their teeth look crooked on purpose. Tooth gap themselves can be a point of pride or a problem, depending on where you are. In France, they're called les dents du bonheur, or the teeth of happiness. It's seen as quirky, attractive, and even lucky. In West Africa, tooth gaps are also considered highly attractive. In countries like Nigeria or Ghana, they symbolize beauty, fertility, and even intelligence. Some people intentionally modify their teeth to create or enhance a gap. But in other places, a gap is seen as something to fix. Earlobes are another surprisingly meaningful feature. In Buddhist cultures in Thailand, China, and Tibet, long earlobes mean wisdom, compassion, and good fortune. In contrast, in many Western cultures, large earlobes are something people try to hide or correct. There's even a rise in earlobe rejuvenation works, using fillers, lifts, or even surgery to make them shorter. Now let's review hair. Facial hair is one of the most culturally polarizing features. In Victorian England, beards were symbols of authority and intellect. Think professors, philosophers, and politicians. In many Islamic cultures nowadays, a beard is more than fashion. It's tied to devotion, maturity, and masculinity. But in modern Japan or South Korea, a beard is often seen as unprofessional, even sloppy. Men are expected to be clean-shaven, especially in corporate settings. Hair ideals also flip when it comes to eyebrows. In ancient Persia, a unibrow was considered a mark of intelligence and beauty, especially for women. Some even filled in the gap with kohl to create the perfect continuous line. But in much of modern Western beauty culture, the unibrow became something to pluck away. Until artists like Frida Kahlo and new waves of body hair acceptance started reclaiming it as a bold statement. The widow's peak, that little V-shaped point in the hairline, was also once considered elegant and even aristocratic in historic Europe. Portraits of queens and duchesses often emphasized it as a marker of noble blood. But fast forward to today, many people, and especially women, choose to laser or tweeze it into a smooth line. In India or West Africa though, the widow's peak is still embraced as a feature that highlights natural facial symmetry. And of course, hair isn't only about what grows, it's also about when it doesn't. Baldness tells a very different story depending on the culture. In most Western countries, it's associated with aging or a loss of youth, fueling a massive market for hair transplants and restoration. But in ancient Greece and Rome, bald or shaved heads were tied to wisdom and masculinity. And in many African cultures today, shaved heads are not only common but considered trendy and powerful. Last but not least, let's talk about bodies, sizes, and shapes. In many African, Polynesian, and Middle Eastern societies, fuller bodies are a symbol of wealth and fertility. All the while, modern Western fashion tends to idolize slimness with curves only in specific, approved places. In East Asia, male beauty is often slim and delicate, whereas in the West, male attractiveness is often linked to muscles, bulk, and a gym body. At the end of the day, beauty standards are never fixed. They change across countries, across time, even across social class or religion. What one culture hides, another celebrates. What one generation calls a flaw, another tattoos on as a trend. And that's the point. The whole idea of beauty is subjective, shifting, and deeply cultural.